All right, perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes,
just fine. Awesome.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
You can put the mic a little closer. It's not gonna hurt you.
All right, there we go.
There you go. And a big drum roll. There you go.
There we go.
All right, welcome to the live stream here at the Diz Insider booth D23 2022. I am super excited because I have followed you for such a long time and we've never interacted personally, and now this was the perfect opportunity to do so. Yeah. Our Disney legend, illustrator, writer, director, producer, Rick Law.
Thanks, Skylar. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. So
yeah,
it's great, all of us getting back together again. So.
I know. Before I ask you questions about D23, I don't want to bore you with asking you about those same old questions about yourself, but do tell those our followers that might not know who you are, what you do, and just to get to know you.
Well, I get that question a lot. So what do you do? Because I've done so much through my career. But I started out at this company almost 30 years ago now, doing the covers of the DVDs and the videos and contributing artwork for that. So for over about 10, 15 years, I did those. So a lot that you would very familiar with would see in Walmart and Target. Nice. And so all those kids that grew up on those videos, they come up to me and say, "Oh, that's my childhood."
Yeah.
So then I moved.
Isn't that cool though?
It is cool.
Because those things are now collectibles, which is wild.
And I never thought of them that way when we were doing them.
No, you just thought it was like the thing to do.
But so just recently on social media, I was sharing about Simba's Pride, and it seems like that just came out. It's about 20 some years old now. So it's the Simba's Pride generation is what I'm saying. And I'm finding there's a lot of followers that love Simba's Pride.
It's one of our writers who is here is just adores the Lion King, anything and everything the Lion King. Simba's Pride is her thing.
There's a huge Reddit community, I guess, and they recently reached out to me, and so they were like, "We love it."
There's a rabbit hole of love for Kovu.
Yes.
So it's wild. What do you have a piece of work that you did that you see on the shelves where you're like, man, I am super proud of that one?
Well, I'm proud of all of them for different reasons, and just being able to work on them at all was, a tremendous privilege, and to be associated with the company. But my favorite, I guess, when everybody says what stands out, is probably Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, because it was the first time that, I was allowed to work with Mickey, and for them to hand me that key.
See, that's cool. And that's like the big one too. It's a culmination of all those classic Christmas, Disney Christmas ones. That's really cool. So what do you do now? What is your thing that you're doing? I'm not asking you to reveal something you can't, but what are you doing now, as in?
Well, currently at the show, I did a print of the castle, like the Sleeping Beauty castle.
Wow.
And if you go on my social media, it also shows there's a time lapse, and it shows from the beginning to the end, so you can see the painting.
Oh, that's cool.
Together. And right now, that's at the Disney fan booth, and it's being shown on display there, because they're going to be auctioning it off at their next event to raise money for the Disney Fan Club.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll put a link to that in the bio, and we'll share that. So check that out. Now that you're here at the expo, it's been 3 years, about 3 years now. Any highlights now about being back? Did you do any panels? Did you visit any other booths besides ours, which has been the highlight of your weekend? No. What have you done? So what are some of your highlights this year?
Well, for me as an artist, and also as a historian, I don't know if I'm a historian, but I appreciate the history, the legacy of the company.
Anyone that follows you, and we'll have your profile. We know you appreciate that rich Disney history.
So I posted at the Ryman Arts booth. They have Herbie Ryman, who's one of the Disney legends, and did the original sketch of Disneyland. They have his original painting palette over there, and I just marvel at that. And like people were saying and saw it online and stuff, it looks like an impressionistic painting, and it's quite beautiful. So and that's an artifact that you're not going to see anywhere else.
Right.
So
that's so cool. I haven't walked by yet, but I kind of marvel at that stuff, and that's kind of how we started. It's like we love the classic stuff. Of course, we obviously cover the newer stuff, but our goal is to just kind of re-enlighten the older stuff. Have you connected with any colleagues while you were here?
Yeah, a lot that I haven't seen in about 3 years, and so everybody's been by Zooms or far apart.
Yeah.
So it's good. So just running into people. So just the day before yesterday, I was with Andreas Deja walking around. And,
nice.
And so Andreas was here, and it's kind of funny too is how he reacts to things, seeing his own stuff on the walls and stuff. We were walking by the animation booth, and I tweeted about this. Was he'd stopped and saw Sorcerer Mickey up on the animation booth, and he said, "Oh, that's mine. I think that's mine," and stuff. And so
it's so crazy how it went from something he designed on a piece of paper. Now it's on these buildings, and it's being sold as items. That's what's kind of cool.
It's very fascinating whenever you create the artwork and then you see how the platform of Disney kind of puts it out into the world as merchandise or whatever, and just seeing how the fans react to that, it's kind of mind-boggling at times.
Yeah, is there anything that you've done so far that you were surprised at? You were kind of marveled by what you saw? Well,
D23.
Yeah, at D23.
At D23.
Probably the Ryman one's the big one.
Well, the Ryman that kind of affected me, kind of really in a integral kind of way. But seeing Walt's plane as well in the arena. I mean, just that they have the best VIP parking in the whole place.
Oh, I know.
It's like,
yeah,
wow, and you walk in there and you see that there's a plane in the building. Is like, wow, it's kind of surreal.
And it's that plane, which is really cool. We've been at the booth all day and then running around panels, and it was really crazy. We had this one fan, because that's what the big thing was, that we get to see actors and Disney legends and colleagues and animators who we feel are Disney legends, like yourself. For years we were calling Don Hahn, our Disney legend, because we knew at some point, there's a place for him, like we feel for you, like there's a place for you. And but what was really cool about this expo is while we're sitting at the booth, and we've been doing like this site for 5 or 6 years, is we have this fan and he's open about it. He's in a wheelchair. He speaks through his iPad, and he had the biggest smile on his face. And he won a poster, and he got to meet us, and that just kind of meant a lot to me. Because it's like a social media thing, and we didn't have this in 2019. And then everyone in 2020, 2021, and even 2022 are just away from people, secluded, and they go through a lot, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally. And this kind of just brought everyone together, and he brought a smile on his face. And he keeps driving back, waving at us because we kind of made his day, and that has been so special.
Well, that's always for me, the Disney company, just overall, and the legacy stuff, what it means to people, and also the accessibility to kids with special needs, and the other thing, whether it's the parks or the products, is something that's very unique, I think, and makes it kind of stand out. So for me, one of the special projects I got to work on at publishing as the creative manager for Disney Learning was we were able to do the first book series for communicatively challenged kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we were able to take those stories and for kids on the spectrum or for deaf and kids, that kind of thing and stuff, and create these stories and present them in a way that was accessible to them. And so seeing that kind of stuff and seeing how it affects them and stuff, that, there's a lot of kids, especially on the autism spectrum, that gravitate towards animation and Disney in particular for whatever reason. And so I meet a lot of those fans and all the time, and it's always very special.
How long did you work on that for?
On that particular project was, I don't know, about a year that we did it before it came out. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. So and that's still out. It's a licensee called, I think it's GEU. And they're out of Brazil, and so it was for Latin America, and specifically, and maybe they may translate it and bring it here to America and stuff. But that was the first time the company had ever kind of broached that before, and I was very pleased to do that. So.
Oh, that's awesome! So that was just something. Now, so when it comes to things like that in your field, do they approach you to do that, or is that something you reach out to and say that's what I want to do?
Well,
which I'm sure you do want to do it, but it's something. How does that process work?
In that particular case, so I was the creative manager for Disney Learning, and so everything educationally based globally would come through myself and my team, and we would oversee that and work with the licensees to kind of create the product. So the licensees, sometimes we would pitch ideas to them and say, this is kind of an idea of where we want to go. Oftentimes they come to us, and so for like GU at that time, they'd already been doing a series of books and that kind of thing, and reaching out to that niche. And so they came to Disney and said, we would like to do this. And for Disney, because of the roles of brand and character integrity, it required a lot of working and massaging of that to make it work within those time frames and stuff, because we don't normally like mix like Disney art with non-Disney art, but because pictograms are very specific for communicatively challenged kids. So we were mixing that art a little bit together and so finding ways to make that work together. So yeah. So it was quite a project.
So that's cool. Because at the end of the day, that's got to make you feel good that you and your team accomplished
well, whenever
that,
you see it impact across kids or the larger community, it's just
especially in another country, nation, region. That's amazing.
Well, for me, and a large part of my work at the company has been for outside of the U.S. So when I moved over to publishing, and we built Disney English, which was the schools in China, and it was teaching English as a second language to all of those kids there.
Oh, you worked on that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
So we did that, built that whole facility, the curriculum, the uniforms, everything. So we built, and that was a project in of itself, can be a whole book.
Oh, man.
And then that laid the groundwork and the foundation for the company then to get the approval, because it was so successful, for the company to get the approval for Shanghai Disneyland, because they had been asking them for many, many years. And the Chinese government was like, well, we don't know.
Right.
Kind of stringing along. And I think that the broader company knew that it was only a matter of time, but Disney English really opened the door for them to say, okay. And the initial go ahead from the Chinese government for Shanghai Disneyland was that it was going to be an educational park. That's what they wanted. And all the Imagineers, nobody knew what that meant. We're like, what's an educational park?
Oh,
so
my
our
gosh.
team was very much involved with them initially to see what an educational park could look like.
So we have you to thank for Shanghai Disneyland. Yeah, we have you.
It's not necessarily me, but our great team.
That's funny.
So yeah, and so it's a great honor, also privilege to see Doris Hardoon, who was the lead.
Oh.
She got the Disney Legends Award, and we worked. I worked with her on her teams.
Wow!
Shanghai Disneyland.
Did you get to see her after the Legends?
I
ceremony?
I haven't seen her at the show, no, but she's the sweetest lady and so kind.
She had one of the best speeches of the night, in my opinion, of the day. I should say. It was an early panel. Her speech was really good. You could just tell she loved her team.
Yes.
And she loved who she worked with. So that's kind of cool to see that you guys connected on that level.
And she loved the idea of the park and what it was bringing. Bob Iger always said, we want to make it, what was it? Significantly Disney and authentically Chinese.
Yeah, authentically Chinese, yeah.
And so, and that really was kind of the buzzword, the go line. And so, and they really made a park for the Chinese. And so, but again, it is a lot of what, when we came in, they wanted our feedback, the Imagineers, was what did we learn? What was the learnings that we did when building Disney English? Because before that, Mickey was an icon, but it wasn't really, this Disney stories weren't known in China. Mickey and Donald first showed up in China on the shorts in the 80s. So for them, it's still a very, very new thing and still kind of a niche thing. So for us, we were learning, like, we wanted to teach the story of the Jungle Book. Initially, we were using that, and we would show the Jungle Mowgli. We'd show the Jungle Book there, but the kids didn't know the story. So for them, it was just a random.
Yeah, it was kind of new. It was kind of almost extraterrestrial in a way.
And so it was just this random kid in the jungle, and it didn't make any sense to them. So we actually had to start, telling them the stories. And so, and that was never really the plan initially. So they got to learn the stories and learn through the stories and through the other kinds of stuff that we did. But,
now, was this an easy process for you?
I don't know if it was easy. I mean, it was very challenging because there was no rule book for that in building it. And, I always make the joke that for Disney English specifically, it was where almost everything else is created in China and imported here to America. Like we built that here in America and exported it to China. So, so it was a very interesting process. We would ask for blueprints in designing the facilities, come from China, and we would see them, and they're all in Chinese, and they were all in metric too, because they do. That's how they do. We're by inches, and so it was constantly a process of that translation process of figuring out, well, how do we make this work? And so for us, when we took it over to the Imagineering and it applied to Shanghai Disneyland, they were building initially Mickey, what they call Mickey Avenue now, which is that's Main Street.
Oh, yeah.
And because Main Street didn't really, the Chinese didn't get it, right? They don't know Americana. They didn't know, they have no history.
Right.
So for them, they were like, well, initially they had designed, and they showed us their first designs, and it was going to be an international street. And it was quite amazing because each structure went through the story geography of,
really?
of the
That
Disney
I didn't know.
campaign. So it would change from like, you'd go from Agrabah to Victorian England to whatever, and it was just this international type street. And I thought, oh, it's amazing. And then we had this big sit down, and I started saying, well, for us, what we discovered with Disney English was that the Chinese didn't have any knowledge of Mickey Mouse other than an icon or those characters, the Fab Five or anything.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Imagineers took that all away and went back and synthesized it and redesigned the whole street to be Mickey Avenue as a place you initially meet Mickey, and this is your entry and the icon. And I was stunned because I was like, wow, I went in and had this conversation and it actually changed stuff. Like, it was like, I was not expecting that. And it became Mickey Avenue. And so, but I was trying to tell them, like, Disneyland, people come to Disneyland, and one of the things that we love about Disneyland is the many layers to it. Mm-hmm. You can go back again and again, and there's still more layers to kind of uncover the storytelling.
Yeah, that's true.
And so initially when it was there, it wasn't very layered. And so this gave them, the Chinese, an opportunity to come in and not only find out about the characters, but find these layers about their stories and the background.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool.
The company and all of that. So
it's like peeling back like a layer of an onion.
Yeah, so there's all of these in-jokes, like you go and there's like train signs that talk about Burbank. And so there's like all this history kind of built in now at the Chinese park. And I still haven't been. And I'm like,
you need to go now.
Yeah, people send me photos and explain it to me. And I'm like,
you're like, I kind of know.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
So,
but you need, so you need to go and experience it, and then know at the end of the day, you help put that together into place.
Well, I went in 2008. I went to China when we first opened the Disney school, the Disney English schools.
Okay.
And they don't call them schools in China. They call them what do they call them? Facilities. Because schools is under a different kind of program. So, after school type program. But so I went there, and that was quite an experience. And I hope to get back one of these days.
That'd be cool. You're not an Imagineer,
no, but I worked with Imagineers.
Yeah, which is wild.
And Disney English should have been an Imagineering project.
That's just what it sounds like. When you're doing something like this, or even in your normal expertise, whether it's illustrating and I know you've produced some things and you've written some stuff, which is awesome. Who are those key people that you looked up to, whether it's Imagineering or it doesn't have to be a Disney legend, but like people maybe in the Disney space that you looked up to? So when you're doing this in China and you're creating these things, like who's your inspiration? Who do you look up to? Like who's like, man, what would he do?
Well,
do you have something like that?
For me, it always goes back to, of course, what would Walt do?
Yeah.
And so that's the ideal.
And
for me, that's everything. And if it doesn't meet what Walt would have thought, then
it's a failed plan.
That's the way I kind of consider it. But for me, there's been many mentors that I've had, or people that I've colleagues that I've known.
Sure.
And, I'm kind of privileged to count them as friends. So. But even before I started the studio, like the first person that ever brought me to the studio as a student was Gary Trousdale.
Oh, yes.
And so he invited me. I met him at Comic-Con, and he said, hey, come on down to the studio, and invited me to the studio, and went in.
Awesome.
And I remember we went to a screening in animation for Roger Rabbit, one of the Roger Rabbit shorts. And Glenn Keane and Andreas were all there, and they're all sitting behind us and sitting in the screening room. And I almost couldn't concentrate on the short because I was like, this is insane to me.
Yeah.
And then Andreas was another big, very pivotal kind of guy for me because he said, hey, come on in and watch me draw. And I just sat with him as he did Scar all day long in his office. And he just allowed me to sit there and hang out with him and listen to Jeremy Irons over and over as he drew Scar.
So this is pre-94.
Yeah. So it was before Lion King came out. And And I remember I was at his office too, and I wanted him to draw. I said, well, could you do me a Scar? And he said, well, I can't because the movie's not out yet, but I'll draw you Jafar. And I still have that Jafar. And
okay, give me the other iconic Disney film.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So he's been a friend and a mentor, and I can't say a close mentor, but from afar here for quite a while. But there's been a lot. I mean, Floyd's one of my best friends. And
I've heard nothing but nice things about him. Every
Floyd
time I've heard anybody talk to him or met him, anyone that I've known that's interviewed him just says he's a sweetheart.
Yeah, well, and two, he's funny. And so funny people, it's just you get around and they have a charm about them and stuff. And he's very, very funny and as a cartoonist. And so, but when I started at Disney Publishing, Floyd was there and he was already a legend. But I noticed like he just had a kind of office that he would inhabit there, and nobody was really hanging out with him, and nobody would have lunch with him or whatever and stuff. He just did his thing.
Yeah.
And so I said to him one day, well, look, let's go have lunch. And then so we did, and then that became over 8 years of just us having lunch every day. And, and eventually laid the groundwork for his documentary that we did. And
which is fantastic, by the way.
So,
we interviewed, our other podcast interviewed Floyd for that and we all sat down and watched it first and foremost. And that's what, like, for instance, my mom, who met Floyd yesterday, came over in tears because she finally got to meet him after all these years. But she loved it. Jungle Book was her thing. Watched this documentary. She just kind of fell in love with the story. So she finally got to meet him. So that was a wonder. So we're gonna link all your stuff, by the way.
It's all
that documentary will get linked. We will put it in the bio. People need to check it out. They're a animation fan, history fan, and want to know his stories. So that's awesome.
So how that came about was through those lunches of over the years and just hearing all the stories. And I had worked on a documentary, helped produce a documentary on Drew Struzan, the movie poster artist.
Oh, yes.
Who was one of my mentors and friends for a long, long time. And so then our same director, we got involved and he said, well, he was kind of looking for his next project and trying to figure it out. And I had introduced him to Floyd, and he said, and I had already started to think this out, like, okay, we want to do a film on Floyd, I think, and laid kind of the seeds, and came to me, and I let him kind of, grow in him. And then he said, you know what, I kind of think, and I said, I'm already there, let's do it. And so we'll make it happen. And so that's kind of was the seeds for the documentary on Floyd and how that kind of came about. And then Floyd and Drew became really good friends through me.
Oh, that's
and now
funny.
They live down the street from each other and they hang out.
Well, now they have lunch.
They probably see each other more than I see either of them now. So they hang out all the time.
You just got to text them. Are you guys going to invite me over for lunch?
So it's funny. So but we've done, like, we did a panel at CTN with all of them together.
Nice.
And the two of those guys and myself, and we've done different events and stuff. And
that's awesome.
So like, all these guys have been pivotal. There's, when I was very young, before I started the company, I grew up in Northern California in Salinas. And I found out Ivan Earl lived in Carmel, which was right over the hill from me. And so I literally cold called him one day. I thought I was calling his studio, and it was his house. And I said, can I come on over and meet you? And then he said, sure. And I thought I was going to the studio. So drove on over there with a buddy, and we drive up in front of his house, and it's got Sleeping Beauty, like, bushes outside the house. And we're like, oh my gosh. And I was so naive at the time. I tell a story about Ivan all the time. So we went to the front door. I knocked on the door. I thought a butler might come to the door. Like, I didn't know, like, people have money.
Towel draped
like,
over.
I didn't know how it was going to be. I hadn't really interacted with a Disney animator before. And so Ivan answered the door, and his house, you would come in his house, and it was just wall to wall artwork of his artwork in there, with an inch of space between it. And it went, there was a stairway when you first walked in, and it went all the way down the stairway, the whole wall up and down. And so Ivan said, come on in. And we went out in his studio in his garage, and he showed us all stuff. And he's the only artist still to this day, the most prolific artist, I say, even though Drew's the fastest artist I've ever seen. Ivan is still the most prolific artist because he would work on like 6 and 7 paintings at a time. It was
really?
An assembly line day. So he had them all on different easels, and he would work on one, and then he'd let it dry for a little bit and go to another one. And so it was constantly this conveyor belt of work. And so got to spend time with him. And then so I was very pleased that we were able to kind of facilitate the exhibit that happened up at the Family Museum.
Oh, yeah.
Ivan, so we did that. as well as helping to get his Legends Award and finally
cool.
and all those kind of things. So and kind of keep his legacy still alive.
That's
for people.
wow.
So,
that's super. And just to think he's over the hill from you.
Yeah, he was just right over the hill in Cornell.
I used to live in this city called Redlands.
Yeah.
I found out that the original actress to take over the voice of Minnie after Walt retired from Minnie lived in Redlands. Can't find anything in Redlands about her. You'd think there'd be some history because she lived in Redlands like for most of her life before she passed away, and can't find anything on her. It was the closest thing to Disney history I had, and at the time when I learned this, I was like 14.
Yeah.
So this is going on 16 years ago, 17 years ago, and to this day, no, it's almost like she never existed.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I would love to even just see where she lived. Is there a museum or something about her? That would have been so cool to talk to her family. But that's cool that Earl is just right over the hill.
Yeah.
And like I said, those documentaries are great.
Thanks.
So we were lucky enough to at least see the Floyd one. I've seen the Drew Struzan one.
Yeah.
Do you want to do more? Are you gonna do more?
Well, I make the joke that I do them about my friends. Like I do films about my friends. It seems like.
So Andres is next.
I don't know. Maybe it'll be an Andres. That's actually a good idea. Maybe steal it from you.
There you go.
It kind of depends. It kind of depends on how willing they are, and they're a lot of work. To pull the team together, and I'm always up for new projects. It's just kind of I kind of go through life and it's whatever falls in my lap and seems fun at the time that we can get involved in and stuff. And so it's interesting you were saying about mentors and different people and how those things work, like even with China and stuff, was because Bob Gurr and I were talking before, and he was hearing some of my stories. He would listen in on a interview that I did at one point, and he was amazed because he said, it's all the same stuff we did with like Tokyo Disneyland and stuff. It's like the same challenges and the same things that we went through. And you would have thought they would have figured it out, like to create a blueprint for the next one.
But nope.
It's just all over the same stuff.
It's the no guide for you.
The no guide for you.
The legends don't give the newcomers the guide, and then it's a never-ending cycle.
Well, it's a lot harder nowadays because I always, fortunately or unfortunately, it feels like when I came, I compare, people often ask me, they say, well, how's the company different today than it was when you started?
Right.
I say, well, I feel like it was kind of the last vestiges of it being, number one, a company as opposed to a corporation. And still,
that's true.
And still having a family aspect to it. Roy was still around, and the nicest billionaire you will ever meet, as Floyd says. Roy Disney was great, and he still, it felt like, well, there was a guy, at least with the family, that had his hand on the rudder to help steer it.
Yeah.
And so, and in those days, it was, if you had an issue or you couldn't figure out something, you could ask somebody, and if they didn't know, they could call one other person, and definitely they would know. And now there's so many layers within the company of management and those kind of things that it is so big now that it is a lot harder to get things done. And so the legacy stuff, I always go back to, like I say, it's just, that's where I kind of, I've always hearkened to, as opposed to the newer things. But I enjoy the newer things as well and stuff. And I think that they're doing some great things. It's just, it's a lot different now. So
for sure. And when you own so many different branches, and then there's so many different guidelines within those branches, and that totally makes sense.
A lot of rules and restrictions and things. And, so.
Out of my pay scale, for sure. Out of my pay scale. Well, that's awesome. Let me ask you, because I do want you to experience the rest of D23.
Yeah.
Let me end it with just a couple quick questions for you, from my knowledge.
Yeah.
The first one is when are you going to come on the show again? Because I need you on the show again.
I will. Whenever you. I just say invite me anywhere and I will show up. So
I'll come to you. we'll have a nice little sit down. We'll do another long form interview.
Certainly.
We'll play some games and
people
make a game of it.
They'll ask me on Twitter and things sometimes, and they'll say like, well, how come you didn't do this show? Or they'll send me, well, how come you been out there? And I have to be invited. And even Floyd will say to me sometimes, he's like, oh, you should just go to that thing. I'm like, I'm not a Disney legend. I can't just go to a thing that I'm not invited to.
You're always welcome here on our channel. Yeah, you can always come on our podcasts. So what can you tell us? Where can people expect your work to be seen next that you can talk about? It might be hard. I know there's a lot of secrecy to probably what you're doing.
Yeah, that I can talk about. Well, I'll be at the next Disneyana fan club show. So that's, had the art here on display.
Yeah, we saw that.
And I'll be there. And that's October 22nd in here in, I think it's Garden Grove, Anaheim.
Yeah,
area.
we saw that.
So I'll be there and doing that show and just saying hi to people and meeting people and with the Prince. Other than that, it's like, during the pandemic, when everybody was cooped up, I started actually drawing again because, Disney, as you move up the food chain, you kind of oversee artists, but you don't necessarily get a chance to draw all the time. So people start asking me for commissions and those kind of things. And I've just been saying, okay, as we can do them, we'll.
Nice.
So that's kind of what I'm working on right now. And I mean, I have a few other things in the hopper, but nothing I kind of announce or talk about.
Oh, for sure.
So
I get it.
There was, we've been working on for many years, a restoration of one of Ivan's old shorts that he did.
Oh, nice.
And I just got an update because I kind of stepped back a little bit from that. But I just got an update that is almost done now. So, in fact, there was an update online. I think I'm going to post on my Twitter about that.
Oh, nice. So we'll keep our eyes on your Twitter.
So there's a lot of things I just try to platform or push ahead, and sometimes I'm more involved and sometimes less involved, and but you just try to be a voice for good things.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So I want to have you back.
Thanks.
You're always invited here. You're always welcome here on any of our shows. All the links to your socials will be in our bio.
Great.
The Disneyana Fan Club event will be in the bio, as well as links to your work. So on the documentaries and everything else. So
Appreciate it.
I will make sure they go find it. Make sure you check him out. Make sure sweetest guy I've met all weekend. He deserves your follow. He deserves all the respect you can give him. Rick Law.
Thanks, Skylar.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Thanks so much. And then we'll do this again.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Enjoy D23.
Yes. Thanks, Derek.
Cool.
No, there's my face. Would you like a water?
Yeah, I'll take a water.